Hello everybody, I'm Cam Christo, and this is a review of another 2 Tinto Talks. I thought I was going to wait until they put out 6. Until they put out 8, so I could do a review of another 4. You see this freaking paragraph? Do you see it? Have you read this yet? If you haven't, allow me to blow your minds. The new game, as someone put it on the forum, is not, as it turns out, EU5. It's not. That was just a false smokescreen. It's actually MEIOU Taxes 4, 4.0. Have you read this? I'm gonna read this to you. We're gonna go over the whole Tinto talk. We're gonna go over 4, 5, and 6 in this video. Okay. Forget all that nonsense. Listen. We're gonna go proper YouTube. Listen to this. All right, proximity. So what is proximity? It's basically a distance to capital value. While traveling on the open sea is extremely costly, proximity is costly over land. But along coastlines, where you might have a high maritime presence, you can keep a high proximity much farther. Further, tracing proximity upon major river reduces the proximity cost a fair bit, and if you build a road network, that will further reduce proximity costs. Baby, they added communication efficiency. It's so good. Let me talk you through this bit by bit so you can understand. I need to zoom out a bit and we can come back up here to the top. There's also maps and things. They're cool. They agreed to add other estates. They've added the Dimmy. I don't know if there are plans to add others, but we'll see. There's lots of cool stuff in here, but these 3 paragraphs, count the other one, these 4 paragraphs alone make me more excited about EU5. And yeah, it is EU5, but there's a lot of MEIOU Taxes stuff in this dev diary. Make me more excited about EU5 than anything we have seen so far by some distance. This is the gamification, the implementation of geographical determinism. It's amazing. I love it. This is the kind of thing that has been restricted to mods like MEIOU Taxes thus far. If you are not pogging out of your gourd right now, you have yet to conceive how great this is. We're going to look at this dev diary first, and then the one before it. Not least because this dev diary countermands some things from the first dev diary, which is a good thing, and I don't want you to listen to me talk about the first dev diary and get annoyed. So, let's look at this. Tinto Talk 6. There are 2 main amazing topics in this dev diary. Tinto Talk, they want to call it Tinto. Look, I don't care about your branding. I'm sorry. It's a dev diary. So, in this dev diary, there are 2 amazing things they have revealed. Number 1, they are adding a new estate. At least one more estate, the Dimmy. Now, I am not particularly invested in the Dimmy having an estate. I think you can, to a certain extent, accurately represent the way that the Dimmy behaved and model them within commoners and burghers and stuff, just by having, them be sensitive to religious conflicts and things like that. But that's not what's good. It's one of the things that you might think is good. Hands up. Maybe you think that's really, really important. That's fine, of course. But what's good about the fact that they've put the Dimmy in is that 1 week ago, maybe slightly less than 1 week ago, slightly more, I can't remember, Johan said, there is a chance that we add new estates, but it's extremely unlikely. A lot of people said, we really want to see more estates. We really want to see Dimmy. People also said we really want to see nomads, or tribals. So I don't know what. Maybe they're also going to do that. I would like to show you something fresh out of the oven based on your feedback last week. That's why we're doing these Tinto Talks, to make it your game as much as ours. Everybody says this. Everybody says we love feedback. People do love feedback. I don't know how many of you have worked in corporate environments. We corporate sods spend so much time trying to get user feedback and trying to incorporate it into games. It doesn't always seem like it, but people are desperate for feedback. What people don't often do is mock up an implementation of your feedback in a week and then announce it. like this is all still work in progress. So it's not like a promise or a commitment, but this is friggin' awesome. It's amazing. It's a good sign. They said they were doing Tinto Talks rather than dev diaries because they wanted to take early player feedback and actually integrate it. And this makes me feel good about that. It makes me still feel so good that I'm like, is this a psyop? Did Johan like show the estates but not the Dhimmi because he knew people would say like you should add the Dhimmi, and then he put them in? I'm sure that's not what happened. I just think it's funny to consider. Anyway, don't worry too much about how the estates work. Well, those are in Dev Diary 5, and we will go over that in just a moment. But apart from that, yeah, they're taking on board feedback. They're listening. Put your feedback in the Dev Diary threads. And also, my advice, put it there very shortly after the Dev Diary has been posted. I know that Johan is reading and being very active then. He is also later. Okay. It's a good sign. I think it's a good sign. So let's talk about this. So this is the matter of control and proximity. If you are familiar with MEIOU Taxes, you will know what I'm talking about. So here, let me show you MEIOU Taxes. This is MEIOU Taxes 3.0. This is Great Yuan. Great Yuan, who, by the way, in the start date of EU5, own all of this. that box is square, and so added in more than it should have. But like a lot of this stuff is all going to be yuan, and including all of this northern bit, 88 million population from that early Dev Diary, remember? Anyway, so this has a concept called communication efficiency. In your capital, you have perfect communication efficiency, and it gives you -1 monthly autonomy change. As you get further and further away, the communication efficiency declines. How does it calculate the communication efficiency in MEIOU Taxes? In short, it's how fast you can run from here to here. And you are allowed to get on a boat and have the boat take you to here and then get off the boat. That boat can go through canals and things like that, and the better ports you have, the faster it can get off, and the better roads you have, the faster you can move, and the terrain affects how fast you can move. The better you can communicate with a place, the better you can control that place. What does that motivate? Well, it motivates you to play coherently. It implements geographic determinism in a way that I think is amazing. If you're not familiar with what geographic determinism is, it's the idea that, I mean, there are various different concepts called similar things, but the idea is that how human societies develop is to a certain extent controlled by their geography. So, for example, China never really did that much conquering past the Tibetan plateau. Why is that? Well, it's because of the geography. I mean, okay, this is not an area of history I know a lot about, just to be clear. This is just an example. Why is that? Well, it's because the Tibetan plateau is a freaking beast of a thing to send armies across. It's really hard to maintain control of both this area here and this area here because, you know, coordinating and sending armies and messages and taxes and trade between the two is going to be an absolute freaking nightmare. So what does that mean? What does that mean in a game if you implement these kinds of restrictions? It means you build nations that make sense. And that's so great, because I've just told you about what's going on in MEIOU Taxes, right, Christo? Why are you talking about what goes on in MEIOU Taxes? We want to hear about EU4. Well, that's what they're doing. They're just porting that feature. Now, they're not literally porting the feature. It's not exactly the same. In some ways, it actually might be better. We'll have to see. But basically what they are doing is they are implementing something very similar. And I say they're not porting the feature because Johan has previously said, you know, he hasn't played MEIOU Taxes. And to be clear, you know, I believe him. Some of the M&T devs are working on EU5. I know of at least one, there might be others. You know, I don't know that they're working on this. They may well not be. So I'm not saying they're like stealing the idea. Also, minor legal aside, someone on Reddit was like, oh, they can't admit that they're taking that idea because then the M&T devs would sue them. So you should read some end user license agreements for once in your life, people. You put something on the Paradox mods or on the Paradox Steam Workshop, they own that shit. they can do whatever the hell they want. So no, that is not why. I think it's genuinely just that this system, the idea that control is influenced by how fast you can get somewhere. And of course, it's not just about sending messengers somewhere. That represents, you know, your officials sending you situation reports so you can send back orders and all of that kind of thing. That makes total sense, right? It's how fast you can get an army there. It's how fast you can resupply an army there. It's how fast you can send reinforcements if the locals are getting unruly. It makes perfect sense. And so it's such a good system. It's such a good system. Okay. Breathe. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what they've done. control value. Don't freak out. It sounds like CK3. They implemented it really badly in CK3, but it's kind of good here. Don't worry. So there is a trending equilibrium, and it just shows you what the trending equilibrium is, which is such a good change versus MEIOU Taxes, where in 3.0 right now you have to add up a bunch of friggin' integers to work out where it's trending. So annoying. It's incredibly impressive, don't get me wrong, but it is annoying. It just tells you where it's going. It tells you how fast it's changing. It tells you what it currently is. What does control do? Well, control appears to be more or less autonomy. There may also be separate autonomy systems. Johan has hinted at that, but more or less it seems like autonomy. So you might be confused because it says levy size increased. My assumption here is that as you get less manpower from somewhere directly as the state, you increase the amount of people who are available in the place that can then be levied. Sorry, whacked my microphone. That can then be levied as, like local levies, which I assume you would only get access to through some kind of negotiation with estates and having estates on side or estate laws in place. But we'll see. So it's not, I don't think that is strictly a benefit. It's more like it's the outcome of the manpower. That's my prediction. They also have more market protection, meaning you can trade with the area less, meaning they'll have more sensitive local pricing, things like that. Okay, so that's control. It's not a complicated mechanic. And that's one of the things I think is great about this. Sure, there'll be nuances, but it's not a very sophisticated thing that you need to deal with here. There's not a million things to worry about. There's control. Okay, how much control do you have? Well, I am sure lots of things will feed into it, but one of the big ones is going to be proximity. Proximity is how close it is, but not quite, because it's actually how fast can you get somewhere. Because you can travel around coast lines very easily. You might be confused why traveling around coastlines is faster than traveling around the open sea. Let me drop some seafaring knowledge on you. Let's say you want to get from here to here, okay? That's pretty easy. Why is that easy? Because you are sailing a ship which can't sail very close to the wind. What does that mean? It means some technical things, but most relevantly, it means you can't choose which way you go some of the time. So if you want to go from here to here, you might have to go here and then later here and then later here and then later here and then later up here, okay? That would be a fairly good outcome. In the optimum outcome, you can just go straight down and make it there really fast. That's fine, right? But you can't rely on winds. Some times of year, in some very specific places, you can more or less, and I'll talk about those in a second, but in general, you can't really rely on winds. That's why in the period of EU4, or was it slightly before EU4, I'm not totally certain, when England imposed an embargo on Burgundy, that really hurt Burgundy. And you might think, why the hell does Burgundy care? Like, they don't have to sell their fabrics to the UK. They can just sell them to, Brittany or to Spain. But that's not actually true, because if you leave this port and you cannot go into this port or this port or this port or this port, you can't get here. You might be able to get here, but you can't risk setting off, because if you end up in this port and your goods get seized, you can't get here. So why does that matter? Because if you're trying to get from here to here, that's pretty easy, right? You can consistently do that. And the game will represent that as, it being pretty easy going. And also you can, stock up on fresh fruit and not get scurvy. Lots of other things go into this. If you want to get from here to here, you're going to have to follow trade winds. Trade winds are in quite specific places and they are seasonal. So for example, there is currently a tradition of sailing where you sail from Europe down to Africa, across to South America, up the coast to around here, and then back across to Europe, right? Following the old trade winds, which did much more nefarious things than we do these days. So I've done the trip from, here across here. And you can sail from here to here with a wind behind you at certain times of year very, very consistently. You want to sail from here to here, not so much. So, depending on the time of year. So it makes sense that you can travel much faster around the coast. The other reasons are like, you got to see, you have to deal with bigger storms and all that kind of stuff. You can't take shelter in ports. There's lots of reasons, but that's a nerdy seafaring one that I know about. So I'd like to, I just wanted to share that one. So that's naval proximity. The really cool stuff, there's many cool stuff. As you can tell, I have not written notes on this. I'm just very excited. So proximity matters. They haven't told us that, ports make it faster. I really hope ports matter. They have told us roads make it faster, which is really, really awesome. They haven't specifically told us that having a road, like let me show you back in the MEIOU Taxes example. In the MEIOU Taxes example, if you have a road here, 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 for example, it's a bad example because it's but like here, here, right? You can get from here to here faster. I hope that's how it works, and they haven't just made it such that if this province has roads, this province counts as having better proximity. I hope you do have to actually build meaningful networks, because that's one of the most fun things I've ever done in EU4 was when I was playing my my world conquest campaign, and I built like the German road, and that allowed me to establish my control over all of Germany, or like the French road, which allowed me to establish control over the inner French area. If you just build roads everywhere, that's going to be much less satisfying. So I hope they get that right. We'll see. You can have bailiffs. So bailiffs sound very much like local administrations in MEIOU Taxes. This helps you have a kind of local proximity source, basically, which makes sense. This is, you're sending your delegates out. But in this case, it says it has a drawback. It adds more nobles to the location. That will both empower the nobles, and it will give a cost in food for the nobles, which is interesting. You're going to have to be paying the cost of the food of your state employees. Is that what I'm getting here? Could be interesting. Could be very interesting. I hope it's not always just nobles. Like, this seems to ignore the fact that there are bureaucrats, and nobles aren't just bureaucrats. They're agents of the state, specifically empowered to disempower nobles, at least at certain periods and in certain stages of the path to modernity. We'll see. Now, maritime presence, last one. A bit less, last one on this step die. Very cool, easier to talk about though. Your naval power is going to affect your ability to control trade in a market, which sounds really cool. So if you don't protect your coastlines in a war, for example, you're going to suffer. Napoleon's going to need to do a continental strategy if Britain's navy is too strong, because otherwise Britain is just able to trade with all of Europe, even though Napoleon controls quite a lot of it. If someone controls the sea, they're going to be able to control who they can trade with. Meaningful, dynamic, built into the game blockades that make sense and affect the economy. It's so good. It's so good. It's promising. It's very promising. This is a good dev diary. Let's take a look at some of Johan's comments real quick. Control can reach 0. Excuse me. And yes, having early game proximity range is lower than later. That makes a lot of sense. Having subjects makes much more sense under the system, and that makes sense, right? Control is based on proximity to capital. Much better to have a subject in an area who controls it properly rather than you just holding it kind of meaninglessly. Hopefully that's true, because often in MEIOU Taxes, what can happen is just controlling an area to be the person that controls the trade taking place in the area is worth it, even if you get no taxes. But he does talk about something later on. Different mechanics for EU4 economy, where you consciously reduce your control in exchange for less unrest. Different mechanics for that is really interesting. I'm assuming you can kind of grant local autonomy to an area in a more durable way, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to do too much speculation in this video because it's already longer than I intended. You can build roads. There are techs that improve it. The question was, can roads and canals be built? He said roads can be built. So it sounds like you maybe can't build canals, which is a shame. Hopefully we get them too. Areas can be completely depopulated. If you have an exclave and there is no bailiff or similar, interesting response, then you won't have any control. So you can't hold an exclave. That makes sense. Maybe there should be some kind of, I don't know what the HRE is going to do. Many people are asking this. We'll see. But yeah, we'll see. High control is always good. Based and centralization pilled. The Leviathan comes for us all. Cope and seethe and caps. Sorry. that was too many memes all stringed together. The story of humanity, 1377 to 1821, is the triumph of the nation state and centralization. I think that's really fun, quite apart from the fact that I think it was very good for humanity. It was also just it's really fun to play. So I like the idea that high control is always good. Yes, so wealth that is not taxed because of lack of control goes to the estates. It doesn't vanish. Pretty freaking cool. Pretty freaking cool. And yes, there will be some tiny remnant of Norse mythology. So you could do a Norse revival run, which sounds pretty freaking sweet. These are colonial nations. They are something you actively want to set up, even if not forced to. So it sounds like they're making colonial nations basically just subjects, and because it's so far away, you'll need to, otherwise your control over the area will be really, really low. Which is precisely why colonial nations actually existed, and I love it. This, I can't express, so there is, I know I'm excited. Can you tell that I'm excited? It's been a long day, and this is the highlight of it, and I'm very excited. So, colonial nations and the whole idea of building geographical determinism into your game is great, because what it allows you to do is have sensible historical outcomes that happen not because they're historical, like they do in EU4. You just have to have a colonial nation because a colonial nation randomly pops up when you have 5 cores in a region. It happens because the systems exist to show why they actually did happen. Right, yes, sorry, so I got briefly distracted by my dog and wife, who were both being very cute. So the point about geographical determinism makes it great, and I was trying to explain this. She didn't enjoy it, I admit, but I was trying to explain this to my wife over dinner. So the point of a game being historical, in a sense like this, setting up this kind of system where it makes sense historically, to me is not because the game simply mirroring history is some telos, some automatic telos, some end which you should be striving towards. It's because when you build in historical systems, you're... How do I put this best? The best game designer in the world is worse at their job than hundreds of years of human societies naturally evolving into coherent or at least expedient structures that make sense. You will very much struggle to design a game that is more coherent than the real world is, because the real world is, you know, real. Like I know this is not groundbreaking insight here, but the point of putting in real historical stuff is that it feels like it makes sense because it does. And that doesn't mean the structures that exist in the world are perfect or should be as they are, etc., etc. But they are coherent, some of them to a certain extent, but they're somewhat coherent in that you will get historical outcomes arising naturally from them. So control and proximity naturally results in you wanting to set up colonial nations. Colonial nations being a long way away from you and having local sources of power naturally will result in them becoming wealthier and wealthier and potentially wanting independence, as opposed to just, oh, you got to this tech level, therefore you have more admin efficiency, therefore they're just more disloyal. Like, that is a really, 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 really good feature of this. It also makes you want to build less border gore stuff. It makes you want to build up to natural borders. I'm practically frothing at the mouth because of how good this is. There are the Dimmy. Does it mean there'll be other special estates? Eventually there will be a bit more. So I'm curious to see what the other special ones are. It feels like the kind of thing they're going to find themselves adding more and more and more of forever. Not perfect, but I think on balance it's good. Johan says he enjoys Voltaire's Nightmare, which is interesting. So I'm looking forward to the absolute chaos of the AHRE map. We will see. So rivers are not navigable, worth noting. Let me keep going. Right, this is something I forgot to read out. So there are, you can make city towns, and then you can also make cities. You begin the process to upgrade from one to the other, and then you can allow once you've done it, you can begin to do other things. So you can put new buildings in there and things. If you're familiar with the Imperator system, it sounds like this is kind of like that, but without so many of the kind of immediate impacts that has. Manpower is 100% connected to POPs, which is pretty cool. I hope that means that when people die, POPs also count as dying, because connecting it in one way is easier than the other, so I'm told. There is no autonomy system. It's just the control. So I assume that means that you can grant local rights and privileges and things, and that's not technically an autonomy system, but we'll see. UI is obviously placeholder, so that's totally fine. Makes complete sense. And yes, unrest and control are not directly related, but control can make it easier to lower unrest. So makes sense. Makes sense. You can see how areas that the state has more direct influence over, they're going to be able to exert that influence to do the things that could reduce unrest more easily. Yes, there are forts. And yes, the range is 0 to 100% on control. That's it's not surprising. So there's a correlation between low control and rebellion, but it's not in itself the reason. So I guess we're going to have to learn more about the rebellion system, but it's going to be really, really interesting. So yeah, settlement, town, city, and it's something that you control directly. It's not my biggest. I'd like it to be a little bit more out of our hands, like it could happen on its own, like when an area just naturally gets richer or the estate's doing it, but they're not really doing local wealth, it seems like, so fair enough, it kind of has to be. Yeah, Cossacks will also come in. Cool. This doesn't matter. Yes, so slaves are representative population. What else have I missed? This is, yes, more specifics about the naval stuff, which I want to get more details on before I go on to that. And terrain affects proximity. I still want to know whether it affects, like, yeah, in fact, I'm going to open this in a separate tab so I can post a reply to it. I really want to know whether it affects proximity just if the place is mountainous or if the route there is mountainous, because the latter is harder to implement and display, but much better. Yes, you can increase food production through various ways. Vassal loyalty and enemy aggressiveness affected by control and proximity. Sometimes yes. Very cool. Incidental advantages having low control, not really. Bigger levies, if levies are cheaper than manpower? Feels like there might be one, but obviously Johan knows more than me. Not talking about this till the spring. Yes, when it doesn't appear into the void, it goes to the local population. Although he says local population for its own uses, but he's also said that the estates have global wealth, so I don't know. Yes, emigration to colonies will lower your old world areas population, which makes sense. Okay, here we go. It traces the cheapest route. Okay, so that confirms, as far as I'm concerned, it does actually take a route to get there. It's not just like, you know, you are X distance away and you're mountainous and you have roads, therefore it's Y proximity. Oh, that's so good. That's really good. I'm very happy about that. There are no building slots. That's something that's been confirmed before. Nobles are promoted over time. Yes, there are roads displayed directly on the map. Would very low control result into secession if there is a tag in the area? It could be likely. So we need to learn more about this, but this is interesting. You can't just have, or maybe you can, but only with certain stuff. Maybe only if you grant local autonomy through some other system, like a modifier that removes all taxes but makes the area less likely to rebel or something. The idea that there is going to be secession if you don't have control on an area is really interesting. And yeah, very, very unbalanced values. Don't read the values, so that's fine. That's fine. We're controlling lakes. Yes, so lakes do help for giving you control. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So good. So good. I'm freaking pumped. So you can see the roads on this map here. I'm really, really pumped about how this has gone so far. Multiple levels of roads by tech and things. It's so good. It's so good. Let's take a look at Tinto Talks 5. We are going to be more brief this time, though. So, estates. Here are... I feel like I've talked about this before. Hang on. I'm going to go and check. I feel like I've talked about this, but maybe I just read it. Let me check. No, I didn't talk about it yet. Sorry. Let's dive into it. So, there are... one-to-one with social classes, there are estates. And there are 4, but not anymore. As it turns out, there's at least 7. 6? 6. Counting the... Sorry, 7 counting the crown. So there's the crown. That's you. You are the crown. And then there's nobility, clergy, burghers, and commoners. We now know there's others, but let's just keep talking as if it's just these. The control that these have will add up to 100. Many, many things will modify that control, but at its base, it's delivered by the share of the people who are in each estate, modified by a certain value. So, for example, and of course, all numbers not final don't get hit up on the exact numbers. 1,000 numbers give 50 estate power. 1,000 peasants give 0.05 estate power. You then take all the estate powers, divide them by each other, multiply them up appropriately, and you get the percentage powers that each of them have. Makes sense. They have trending loyalties and current loyalties. So events, actions, etc. will move them away from their trending, and then they'll move back to their equilibrium. If you do certain actions, you can also change the equilibrium. All makes perfect sense. If you've played MEIOU Taxes 3.0, this is all very, very familiar. They also have privileges. What are you whinging about? Sorry, hang on. Right, I'm back. I want to be clear to you and those on YouTube when I turn my head to the side and go, what do you want? It was my dog, not my wife, that was interrupting that time. Okay, so these estates, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because, again, this video is longer than I want it to be and I want to play CK3 tonight. So, but this makes sense to me as the kind of main... These divisions make sense to me. Obviously missing are tribals. Hopefully they'll add those. I suspect they might. It's quite a big change to add them. And they're kind of like, as a centralized kind of urbanizing nation, tribals are kind of in a weird spot because you just dislike them. You just want them to become the others instead. That's certainly the experience in MEIOU Taxes and Imperator and things like that when you have tribes, which is, it's a less satisfying thing than to engage with. Rather, these estates, I can see wanting to engage with these in a kind of give and take way for the whole game, whereas tribals seem like it's very hard to tax people living off the land, just in that kind of very migratory, very low kind of, I'm not sure what the word is. It's not, I suppose it's kind of economic activity. They do have economic activity, but it's, harder to tax, basically. Maybe by certain definitions of economic activity they don't, but they also have happiness levels. The happiness levels are the same as the... Sorry, these happiness levels are the loyalty levels we just talked about. It's just displaying it in two different ways. It's also displaying how it's changing. So in this case, the commoners, it's going up because it's 86, it's trending towards 95, so it's trending up. Awesome, awesome, good stuff. We love our trending equilibriums, don't we, folks? So you then have crown power. So how powerful the crown is going to be modified by all kinds of different things, but you get a bonus or a penalty depending on how powerful you are, especially on things like revoking the cost of estate privileges, changing policies and laws, efficiency of the cabinet, costs of court. There you go. So all the stuff that makes sense, like when you have a really strong centralized crown, you can dictate your will to the estates. When you can't, you're going to have to be more cooperative. If their satisfaction is low, they do different things to you. One is they won't be happy. Like literally the people in that estate will be unhappy, which can cause all kinds of problems. Rebel factions, civil wars. Civil wars, by the way, said to be a bit like Imperator. Can't remember if there's this DD on another one. Then also they have some specific, more gamey impacts from being disloyal. So nobility affects prestige gain and counter-espionage, and the other things. I'll let you read these. I would consider all this stuff not that final, so I'm not going to worry about how balanced some of this stuff seems, but yeah, it seems interesting. So what makes them equilibrium? What makes them have a certain equilibrium? Privileges, stability, reforms, laws, how you tax them, much more. This is not only MEIOU Taxes level. Maybe that sounds insulting, but this is not just MEIOU Taxes level. This is better than MEIOU Taxes level. That many things going into it is actually a better estate implementation than MEIOU Taxes, which, for the record, has the best released estate implementation of any video game that's ever come out. I'm so pumped, man. So, privileges. Remember, you are not final, don't freak out. All privileges impact the power of the estate. Many also increase their satisfaction. Equilibrium, they all have some game impact on gameplay. So for example here, free mobility for the peasants. It makes the peasants happier, but it makes the nobles less happy, and it allows peasants to migrate. Obviously, if peasants can't migrate, you're not going to get a whole lot of migration, because peasants are going to represent the vast majority of your population, at least near the start of the game, unless potentially you're like a city-state, I guess. There are many different privileges, many unique ones, based on where and what type of country you play. It doesn't say what country you play, which I like, because I like ones that are based on culture, religion, geography, circumstance. I don't like ones that are based on tag. It seems needlessly restrictive, just always forces you to play the tag that has the most content in an area, rather than trying out more interesting, smaller tags in the area that could rise to prominence, things like that. This seems great. So there's no stuff about taxes, but it is important to mention that the estates of a country have wealth that's increased by the amount of money that is not taken from them in taxes. Rich estates use their wealth on many things, invest in things that benefit them, will also build things that benefit the country. It's so good. It's MEIOU Taxes. It's freaking MEIOU Taxes. They're making MEIOU Taxes with a big budget and full control over the engine and nothing off the table. And I love it to pieces. It's so good. This is the same as MEIOU Taxes. Basically, you know, I don't know what more to say. If you're familiar with MEIOU Taxes, you're familiar with this. It's great. Nobles will invest in stuff that makes them more nobles and increases the wealth of the nobles. The other estates will act accordingly. It makes sense. These are agents, actors in your nation, behaving in their own interests, not, you know, cooldown timers until you can press a button and take something from them, not people who just arbitrarily hate the state and will always try and work to undermine it. They're agents working in their own interests, and it's fantastic. Very, very happy about this. Let's take a look at the dev posts on this one. I'm only going to talk about the ones that are really interesting because, again, this video is longer than I would like it to be. There are mechanics for passages like the Bosphorus, Dardanelles, Danish belts, etc. will be revealed later. Very exciting. Won't speculate too much. There are ways for estates to force through changes. You can call a parliament, which is one way that the estates get to have their voices heard, but if you don't, or even if other circumstances, there are ways for estates to force through laws. Very, very interesting. What happens if one estate gets more than 100% land or power? They can't, because it's just a share. It's a share of the power. It's not a, it's a normalized distribution. So this is the one that he said. He has never played MEIOU Taxes. But he has talked to Gigao a bunch. If you're not familiar, Gigao, I'll probably be able to tell if I hover over him. There you go. There's the there's the MEIOU Taxes map. Gigao is a prominent figure on the PDX forums and has long talked to Paradox about things that would be really helpful for modders and ideas and things like that. So, you know, when I say that Johan is coming up with all this stuff, it's not just copying from MEIOU Taxes. It's a lot of it may well have come from years of osmosis of ideas and suggestions based on people that have played MEIOU Taxes. But it's also, you know, it's crab evolution, man. It's convergent. Stuff evolves into MEIOU Taxes because MEIOU Taxes is the ideal state for a game to be in. Achievements should always require Iron Man if it were my decision alone. I don't have a horse in this race. I don't care. So I'm not going to get into it. There was a whole argument. Who cares? Technically, it is a click to remove privilege, but the consequences can be something that are big. I would like it if there were slightly more conditions on this, but we'll have to see how it plays. It's very difficult to say. At this stage, I think it's easy to praise and hard to criticize, and that's fine by me, because I like being happy, so I'm just going to praise and not criticize much. It's hard to criticize when you can't tell how all the systems work together. It's easy to say, that sounds dope, and I'm just going to keep saying that sounds dope, and that's fine. Will the demands, bonuses, and equilibrium of the different estates depend on the culture, government, or tag? Those impact the tools you can use, but there's no like arbitrary bonuses or debuffs. This makes a lot of sense. I love this. I love this to pieces. I hope there aren't tools that are arbitrarily locked away from you though. So like there's no, I don't know, you are an Indian nation, therefore you're able to do something unique with your clergy. I hope it's like you are this religion, and therefore if a nation based in the Horn of Africa get lots of immigration from India and then convert to Hinduism, for example, I still get access to all that stuff. Hopefully it's tied sensibly to the right bits so that it's still kind of dynamic. Are there a chance of crown privileges that are affecting like administrative corruption? So this is again a feature in MEIOU Taxes that they hadn't yet touched on. The crown has reforms and privileges and things that needs to happen more as well. They have touched on reforms separately, but there is a chance for those, yes. Please do it, Johan. It makes so much sense for corruption and things like that. And yeah, you know, acknowledging the importance of bureaucrats. Will countries start with a set privilege slot or as empty as EU4, historical privileges, and be set up in such a way as to not have a civil war immediately brewing at the start? That makes sense, except the places that did have civil wars brewing immediately at the start. I kind of hope they do set it up so that they still have those. But the ruler skills will impact other things we'll talk about later. So sounds like not a state loyalty. Like there's no diplo skill that just makes the estates more loyal. I'm very interested to see what they do with ruler stats in a world without mana. Will you be able to toggle impossible terrain being the same color? Yes, it's a toggle. Fine. He has the wrong opinion. That's okay. Yeah, there's fog of war of the map. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about this or this. See, when I say don't worry about it, I mean like I'm talking mostly to myself. You can worry about whatever you like. Does it make sense to have a state power based on population? A province having 5 noble families instead of 1 doesn't make the nobility in that province 5 times stronger. They might be weaker if there's infighting. And he says it's an abstraction we're willing to make. Fair play. Fair play. That makes total sense to me. Obviously, this is true, but how the hell do you model that? I mean, you have to go to like CK2, 3 levels, and it's not realistic in this kind of game. It's not realistic or desirable in this kind of game, in my opinion. This is the thing that people disagreed with. And yes, Indora's on the map, which people are kind of pogged about. Food production after the summer. It's a long time till we get to hear about that. Hang on, we pause recording until I find an interesting one. Here we go. This is one of the exciting ones. Levies. Does that mean there aren't standing armies in the game until the mid to late game? Less appropriate. Yes. Yes. Interesting. So only if you have very specific reforms, which are gated behind tech or state control or lack of a state privileges, who knows, you can't have a standing army. I assume the places that did have standing armies will have, like, I hope the places that did have standing armies will have some way to display that. Like, you know, the Romans maintained a standing army, not a big one, but as I understand it, some degree of a standing army at some points here. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be similar to Imperator. Chat's suggesting it might be. I think it's not crazy, but we'll see. We'll see. Will each member of an estate have an equal contribution? It depends what exists in the location they live in. I assume that means if you live in a really wealthy, well-developed place, you will have more impact than if you live in a poor, rundown place, which, sorry to say it, makes lots of sense. There ain't no one man, one vote system yet. Will the number of people belonging to each estate change over time? Yes, it depends on the social class pyramid of your country, meaning if you have loads of cities, then you will have lots of beggars. If you have loads of rural areas, you're going to have lots of peasants and maybe more clergy. I wonder if you could increase the number of clergy just by building churches, or if it's about just like rural areas have more clergy, or, you know, I don't know how that'll work. It'll be interesting. Yes, this is just worrying about the exact numbers. I wouldn't worry about the exact numbers. And yes, slaves currently give no power to any estate, which doesn't really make sense. I feel like they should give some to like the wealthy people in their area, but yeah, it's okay. Yeah, and crown power is calculated from total population, and then obviously it's going to be modified by a bunch of stuff, or maybe it's just modified by modifying the power of other estates, which makes sense to me. I hope there are interesting ways to try and increase crown power over time. Yeah, this one calls some fighting. Each country has an elite class. Even a communist state has it. The name will just be different. And everyone was like, what? Communism's in the game? That means the end date must be later. And he's obviously just using an analogy. The Reformation will be a longer process. Many more options along the centuries, from Lollards to Hussites to Lutherans to Calvinists. Heck yes. Can't wait to see how they implement this. That sounds awesome. Give me my Lollards. It's going to be fun. So this was something that I had a lot of questions about, and I still haven't got a clarification on exactly, but I'm leaning towards the interpretation, which I will now explain. We are only showing the flat map for now. So, sorry, I shouldn't have scrolled down from this one. A flat map. There we go. Let me show you why that's being brought up. This map, I am sorry to say, it does not look good. Looks pretty bad to me. Really quite bad. Now I'm in the middle of making a video, like ranking all the different maps that Paradox has made that I've played, and I'll be releasing that at some point after this video. But this one, it's not being ranked highly. Of course, we're only seeing a small amount. Don't worry about it being a little washed out. It's because this area is in the fog of war. But let's talk about that at the end of the video. For now, we'll press on through these comments. They're only showing the flat map, meaning maybe this is the flat map and you can toggle something that makes it show relief or other things, but we'll see. We'll see. What influences the location a state in a locate here? Is the influence population of an estate in a location influenced by what's in them? Many, many things that you'll learn about. Fine. He's on holiday. Yeah. Yes, all pops affect research, so everyone being literate is better than just your clergy being literate, for example. Already covered this. Will different countries get different power structures? For example, clergy providing nobility and or burghers attributes? No, that would be held to keep balanced. Yes, totally fair. Stability in a couple of weeks. Very much looking forward to that. And when calling a parliament, Johan says he personally likes to have at least one strong estate that he can rely on when calling a parliament. That makes sense. You know, state plus estate versus the others to be able to push something through makes sense. So yeah, he said doubt it, but he is in fact going to be doing this, which is pretty cool. Anything else that wants to be covered? Yes. Okay. So if you are a heathen or a non-accepted culture, you have no political power, which is interesting. So accepting new people will make them probably less rebellious. If you can just accept people these days, I don't know. But it will also empower them politically. So you'll have to be careful with that because they might have interests that don't align with yours in terms of you can't necessarily accept people but then keep converting them, or, you know, it'd be interesting to see that. Pops will migrate. Pretty sick to confirm. Expected in anything that has pops, but seems pretty good. No Lucky Nations mechanic in this game. Lambert is pogging out of his mind. Let's keep going. Yeah, personal unions will change how they work, admitting, of course, that change them from what, Johan? From EU4? It's obviously EU5 at this point. It's not even funny. I was saying on the YouTube Discord today, by the way, they shouldn't announce it. They should actually never announce it. When they release the game, they should just say, like, the as of yet unannounced game is now available for sale. We'll let you know soon what the name is. And then, like, okay, we're releasing the first major update for the unannounced game, and then the DLC. It would be, I think that'd be very funny. The levies pulled from all pops or just commoners. All of them makes sense. And estates can be modded. So the parliament is separate from the diet? No, it's just the same, different names. Many places have localized names. Fine. We can have dynamic flags. Pretty sweet. No building slot system. That's fine. Far easier to play tall if you play, you know, somewhere nice and conducive to it. Greenland starts as Norse confirmed. It was staunchly Catholic in 1337. Bishops there for several centuries. Shame. No Greenland Norse run. Okay. That's all the comments. The map is bad. In my opinion, the map is bad. This is a purely taste-based take. So I put a post up on Reddit the other day comparing this map to the MEIOU Taxes map. Of the same region, because I was curious to run the comparison. So this is the comparison, and to me, this is a slam dunk for MEIOU Taxes. The visible terrain is so much nicer, but this was not. I mean, apart from anything else, everyone was like, "I wish I could get MEIOU Taxes to run." I was doing some troubleshooting in this. My comments saying that I thought this looked much better were not popular. So I'm surprised, honestly, that people think this looks better than the MEIOU Taxes. I had thought, perhaps naively, that everyone had the right opinion and agreed with me, but no, some of you are wrong. Some of you think that the old one is the new kind of modern MEIOU Taxes maps were better. Oh yeah, small gripe, because I just thought this was really funny. I said that I was dividing paradox maps between the kind of older ones and the modern ones, and someone was like, "What do you mean by modern?" And I was like, "Well, I mean the ones that were in like the more recent era, like from I think I said from CK3 onwards." And I was like mad downvoted for that answer. It's like, it's just what modern means, man. Anyway, I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, this looks. It looks cartoonish to me. I like depth. I like graininess. I like relief. So we'll see what the non-flat map looks like. I hope it's a settings toggle. Do you want the map flat or do you want it with relief? I hope that relief shows, rivers. I can't see any rivers. Am I just being silly? Let me look at, where is there a river? There should be a river here. I can't see rivers very well. So all in all, I mean, and it's so simple. I really don't like it. But that said, I'm being an optimist. There's loads of time to come. So Johan said rivers are hidden in this mode. Fair enough. Fair enough. So my concern is, my reading of what Johan has said is that there are several map modes. Some of them are flat, some of them are not. I really don't want that. I hope it means what some people have told me that they think it means. And I think I don't think Johan is communicating very clearly if they're right, but I really do hope they're right. Which is that there's a toggle that just changes all maps. Because I don't want just like a terrain/political map mode which has relief on it. I want all of the map modes to have relief, culture, religion, all the economic ones, etc., etc., etc. And yes, it may change based on how much you zoom in and so on. I want it to have relief however far I zoom out. This is something that historically has been quite moddable, but adding a global relief map is a huge bit of work, one that I hope Paradox foots the time bill for, rather than a modder having to do it. But even if it does have to be a modder, that's fine. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, there is a toggle for Wasteland, but there's a toggle for Wasteland in lots of their games, whereas there's nowhere else that has a toggle for terrain that I know of, at least covering all the maps. There are some, so Imperator is an example of one that has a more flat political map mode and a less flat political map mode. I hope that's not what Johan means, but we'll see. Then also, this is more minor and much, much easier to mod. I don't like this font. I don't like the borders. It's all just kind of, it's too smooth. It doesn't feel right to me. But if you want to hear me talk at length about what I like and don't like, and to be clear, this is not what is good and bad. This is what I like and don't like. But in maps, then do sub the channel and you'll see the next video I put out, which is going to be me rambling about them and making a big tier list of like loads of different Paradox games and mods and so on and so forth. Okay, but let's start where we began, with insane positivity. Control and proximity. I'm so excited. It's going to be amazing. I absolutely cannot wait. See you probably next Wednesday when they announce something even better. I'll try and wait like 3 or 4 more before I do another video on these, just so that I'm not having to put these out every week, because I'd rather compact them together and do it this way, but we will see. Either way, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.